Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, welcome back to Films and Stuff. New day, new episode.
Hi, Ethan. How are you?
Everything is great today, although I know that today we're discussing Moon Knight.
Oh, yeah.
And usually you and I have the same level of enthusiasm. Not today. Your enthusiasm is a 5. My enthusiasm is a 1. I did not like this last episode.
Dun, dun, dun. In fact, let's go one step further. You hated it so much that, do you remember the first thing you said to me was, you said, I think Moon Knight's a skip.
It's a skip. It's a skip. If you look at my tracker,
Mm-hmm.
I have gone from a subscribe to a mooch, and now I downgraded it today to a skip. And I feel that way actually about the episodes. I thought it started pretty interesting, and then it got a little bit artsy. And now, honestly, I just can't follow. And actually, I'm going to ask you to give me a summary of this episode and what you took from it, because I found it was just incomprehensible.
All right, so let's do a quick recap. This was, in terms of episodes, this one was really, if you look at it, the way episodes are generally structured, this one was almost exclusively exposition. This was all background, all filling in the blanks. There was no action. It was really digging into the psyche of Mark Spector. And I do say Mark Spector for a good reason. So let's break it down. So we start first with, you're back at the asylum with Arthur Harrow and with Mark Spector. And what you realize is that you're spending either time in the asylum with Arthur Harrow as the clinical psychologist who's taking care of Mark Spector, or you're back on the ship of the dead being ferried to, the field of reeds by the hippo Taweret, right? The hippo god, or the god that's represented as a hippo. So it's flipping back and forth in between, and in that Harrow mindset, or, in that Harrow scene, there, everyone is doing their best to convince Mark that he's having a psychiatric breakdown, and that everything that he thinks, or everything that he thinks has happened, has been in his mind. And on the boat, what we're getting is that we have to try to figure out how to get out of death and get back to life and get back to where we were, right? And so the first major thing that really happens is that and we discussed this last week. I think it was last week or the week before. We see the scene where Stephen and Mark, when they're on the boat, are represented as two separate people, right? They have their hearts taken out of them and put on the scale, right? And I think this was, I don't remember which god, whether it's Osiris, whether it's Taweret, I'm not sure, but the idea is that the scale has to balance against the feather of truth. And if the scale's balanced, then you can enter the field of reeds, which is like the equivalent of like the Elysian fields of, I guess, Norse mythology or Roman mythology, maybe? I can't remember. Maybe, yeah, Roman mythology. Norse mythology would have been Valhalla, I think. And so they have to go, it's understood that they have to kind of explore Mark and Stephen's memories to bring balance to their hearts. And if they aren't able to do that by the time the boat ride ends, they're going to be thrown overboard and kept onto lost to the sands of time. And
can I just call a timeout?
Yeah.
Is this like physically happening, or this is like emotionally happening in their minds? Where is this like taking place?
So
the boat. Why are they next to each other?
Right.
What?
So if you were to ask Harrow would tell Mark and Stephen that they were having a psychological breakdown. right? And that's not happening. That's all in their minds.
Yes.
I believe that this is really happening, right? That they've been shot, they've been killed, right? Mark has been shot and killed. Remember 2 episodes ago, he was shot at the end of the episode, or maybe it was the end of last episode. I can't remember.
Last episode.
Yeah, he was shot and he fell, did the slow motion fall thing. And this is happening. So in the sense that it's happening physically, I don't think it's happening physically. I think it's happening like, quote unquote, metaphysically, which is to say it's happening, but just not in like the corporeal realm, right? The physical world.
Got it.
So anyway, they go back and then they start exploring the ship, and each room of the ship has like a different memory for Mark. And so like one of the rooms is filled with all of the bodies that Mark has killed, etc. Anyway, it's irrelevant. The point is, we learned during this that Mark Mark had a younger brother who died because they went exploring while it was raining into a cave, and his younger brother dies. And his mother blames Mark for the death of his younger brother quite vigorously. So much so that like
she didn't hold back.
She did not hold back.
Like a mother is supposed to be like, hey, it's not your fault. This was the opposite. It was like, this is your fault.
Yeah, and like maybe even if she believed it, like you'd hope that they would kind of internalize that. But she went after him hard, and she took a hard turn, right? She starts physically abusing him. She's beating him, and so in one of these, sessions where she starts banging on the door to beat him. That's how you learn that Steven gets created. Mark creates Steven as a way to deal with the psychological and physical trauma that his mother is instilling on or putting onto him. And so now we come to the realization that Steven is a figment of Mark's psyche, not the other way around. Right? So this is actually Mark's body. This is Mark's life. But Steven was created.
That's kind of dramatic.
Right?
Yeah?
Exactly.
I mean, they both kind of believe that they were a real person. They were coexisting in a body. For Steven, I mean, which is still Mark, it's pretty dramatic that he now has to like come to grips with the fact that he's actually not the real person.
Right. And so it was working very successfully for them for some time until Mark's mother dies and he has to go to, the funeral / Shiva. And at the Shiva, that's when their lives intersect for the first time in the real world. Right? That's when we see that happening. And then we also see in one of the flashbacks on the boat, we also learn of how Mark becomes Moon Knight. And it's such a very quick blink or you miss it moment. You see that Mark gets his powers because he's been hurt. His entire crew and his entire, the people he's supposed to protect, they've all been killed. They make the mention of his CEO, Bushman, who was I had to do some digging. We'll get into that. And you see Layla's father has died. You see Khonshu come and not protect Mark, but give him the choice to become his avatar and to save him. He does so. And that's it. At the end of the episode, you see that their hearts are still not in balance, and so they've been denied entry, and so monsters are coming from over the ship to try to take them to the sands of time to make sure that they stay here forever. And Steven, girds his loins, shows some guts, starts fighting back, helps Mark, but in doing so, falls off the ship and becomes lost to the sands of time. And when he does, Mark's heart becomes balanced. And so now Mark is on the ship alone, and that's where the episode ends.
I mean, that's a very good summary. And to be honest, it also explained a few things to me that I didn't pick up. But tell me why, because before watching this episode, you were just like, this episode is wow. I think you even called it like a game changer. Why are you so positive on it?
So I'm positive on
I don't say that as accusingly as it sounded, but why are you so positive on it?
So let's break it down into a couple of things. One, it's the first time we're seeing the origin of a superhero in the MCU as kind of like a blah moment. It's not important, right? In the context of this episode, him becoming Moon Knight and saving, his own life is almost irrelevant, right? And think about all the other superhero origin stories we've seen, whether it's DC, whether it's Marvel, all of them. The origin moment is almost like this, angelic or like this, like deified moment in that protagonist's history, right? In every single one of them, there's some defining moment where they become that superhero, whatever it is, right? Whether it's Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man, or, Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man, all of them, there's something like really emotional, something really amazing that happens that converts them to that hero mentality. In here, it's such a small thing that it's not even worth talking about, right? The fact that he becomes Moon Knight and Khonshu's avatar is, frankly speaking, irrelevant.
Is it irrelevant? I mean, this is maybe where I have confusion on what I'm supposed to take away. You're saying it's irrelevant because it wasn't like this monumental event. But it's only not a monumental event because they've minimized it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, any event. I mean, whether it's Tobey Maguire being bitten by the spider, whether it was Iron Man and then when he was locked in the cave and injured, these could all be minimized if you chose to, or they could all be dramatized if you chose to. So here they chose to make it not a big deal. And whether it is a big deal or not a big deal, I guess is up to the interpretation. But the show decided not to focus on that singular event. And that's okay. I respect that. I guess my confusion is when you talk about the exposition that they put in this episode, I found it frustrating that they tried to combine two things. If you're going to show this, balancing of the hearts and, the Steven versus Mark dichotomy and how they, wrangle with this, that's okay. Let's focus on that. But then they should have separated out when Khonshu came and the transformation into Moon Knight. Minimize that. Don't even show it. Or if you show it in a different episode or somewhere else. But it's very difficult, I felt, to get into this episode because I enjoy the mystery, but it just seemed like they were trying to wrap too many things into one episode. I had his childhood. Then I had his current balance between like what's happening with the balancing of the hearts. Then I've got this scene in the psychiatrist's office with Harrow, whether that is or is not true. Then I've got to go back to Khonshu. And I felt like emotionally, I'm just trying to put all these 4 different periods of his being together. And it wasn't really, it wasn't like synergizing for me.
Right.
I just didn't feel like I was getting into the flow of this and I was bouncing around too much and I wasn't able to kind of understand what's happening and I couldn't enjoy the show because I was always being like thrown somewhere else.
Right.
It wasn't fun for me.
Yeah. The reason I think I really liked it was because you're right. They did minimize it out of choice, not because it was a minimal event. But I think that they did that also because the grand revelation in this episode, right, is the fact that Steven is Mark's, let's say, alter ego by Mark's design, not by Steven's design, right?
Yeah.
And that Steven exists only so because his mother was abusive and because he blames himself for his brother's death, right? And I think that, so that for me is like, first of all, emotional trauma, emotional depth that I don't think we've seen in many other superhero movies, especially not in the MCU, which, I mean, as much as I love the MCU, I don't think I would be fooling anyone when I say that they create movies with great drama. They don't. That's not what they're really known for. There's certainly some movies where we've seen excellent dramatic efforts, but as a whole, overall, when you look at the MCU, the first thing that comes to your mind isn't really high drama, right? And when you see,
I mean, it is an action franchise, right? I mean, it's based on
it's
books.
a superhero comic genre, right?
Yeah.
So yes, exactly.
Right.
No, but then having said that, like if you look in Thor 1, the dynamic between Loki when he finds out he's the adopted son with Thor, like there were really moments of Shakespearean-esque drama there. It was well done. But those moments are few and far in between. You don't get that in all of them. In fact, you get them in almost none of them, right?
I mean, Star-Lord and his father's relationship fell a little bit flat.
Yeah, right. I think there were moments in there, but I don't know. That's a separate discussion.
That's a separate discussion. But if you were Oscar Isaacs, and your agent calls you and says, "Congratulations, Pete." Yeah, MCU Marvel wants to cast you as Moon Knight, and you're like, I think I kind of know Moon Knight. Let me refer to the comic book. You look at the comic book, you're like, oh, that's so cool. This is great. Yes, I'm going to take this role. You show up to the set day one and you're like, all right, this is a script for episode 1. You're like, oh, this is so exciting. Come back week 2, week 3. And now you get this script. You're like, guys, wait a second. Like,
where's the suit?
Supposed to be like
where's the batarang?
A superhero, right? Yeah. Like, I've been like training. I got like another 10 kg of muscle, like I've been watching my diet, but hold on, now you're saying I'm just like this emotionally distressed dude because my brother died and my mom beat me and I've got this psychopath alter ego and I'm kind of like, would you be a little bit disappointed in the script in your character? Would you be like, wait a second, I want to be Batman, I want to be Iron Man, like, dude, I want to fight.
I'm not sympathetic. Sorry, I am sympathetic to that.
Right?
I am sympathetic to that. But
it's a bait and switch.
Yeah, but I also think if you look at someone like Oscar Isaac, who is an excellent actor, right?
He is an excellent actor.
I think this is something that's in his wheelhouse. I don't think there are many other actors who could pull that off. Let's put it that way. And I think they're playing to his strength, right? Because he's been in a franchise movie in Star Wars, right? So he's got this franchise experience. He's got the physique to be a superhero, right? But now you also have the third element, which is to say, hey, he also has the dramatic acting chops to pull this off, right? And,
So Pete, you answered the question correctly, but not my question.
Yeah.
And that is, everything you said, absolutely true. He is one of the very few people that absolutely can pull this off.
Right.
But notwithstanding, don't you think he's maybe a little bit like disappointed? Like
that's the thing. So that's the thing. I don't think he is. I actually think this is up his.
This was an action.
I think this is not just his wheelhouse. I think this is something that he would have liked.
All right.
Don't get me wrong. Like if you look at his stuff, right? Like his most recent movie I can think of that wasn't a major franchise was The Card Counter.
Yeah.
It's where he plays like this ex-army vet who was also like a casino gambler and things like that. It's very good. I thought it was very good. I think he likes those kinds of roles. I think he likes the roles which have a little bit of meat and substance on them. And, with all due respect to Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, Poe Dameron was not really anything.
I like Poe.
I liked him. Don't get me wrong. I thought
Poe had no backstory. Poe had no backstory.
No great backstory. And then everything they kind of did in terms of the backstory, they tried to shoehorn in that last, in episode 9, where you find out that he could potentially have been a spice runner.
Yeah.
It was a bit
but
superficially flat.
But Pete, isn't there something exciting about a character and you don't know how they got there? Like, have we hit the point in TV and movies where everyone has to have this very clearly explain backstory so we understand exactly how they arrived at this point in time and what their motivations are? Isn't there something kind of like, I don't know, like suspenseful or creates curiosity? Or like, how did they get here? How did the Karate Kid become the Karate Kid? How did Poe become Poe? How did Luke Skywalker become Luke Skywalker? How did Iron Man become Iron Man? And now we have to go back and ad nauseum detail, put in perspective how they got here.
I think that's also got to do with the fact that this is like a 6-episode TV series versus, a 2.5 hour or 3 hour movie. We wouldn't have seen much of this or any of this if this were a movie.
That's true. But 6-episode TV series is not, this is not, again, 6 seasons. This is not 14 episodes.
Yeah.
It's 6 episodes, 1 season. Is it necessary? Like, isn't there enough Moon Knight to support 6 seasons of action? And I just feel shortchanged by the fact that Moon Knight did a bait and switch on me. And it said, hey, this is a Marvel comic hero. Just kidding. We're going to go into someone's childhood and see how they created a safe space for themselves, which is not a bad story. If that was the standalone story, I might actually be okay with it. I think my frustration is not so much with, it's definitely not the acting or the storytelling or the anything. It's the fact that, wait a second, I'm watching this because I wanted to see Moon Knight. I don't want to see this.
Yeah, I know. I get it. Look, I totally get it. I think the way I'm looking at it is the way, which I've said in the past as well. I think Marvel has used these 6 episodes to be Moon Knight's origin so that the next time we see Moon Knight is going to be in the cinema. And then we don't need to do any of this anymore. And then it's going to be popcorn flick, action heavy, some mystery, some, lots of murdering, lots of fighting, lots of kick-ass visual effects. And you no longer have that baggage of how did Moon Knight become Moon Knight? And they can do that in such a way to say, hey, if you have Disney Plus and you want to learn about how Moon Knight becomes Moon Knight and why he is the way he is, you watch the series. We're not going to spend 15 minutes of our 2-hour movie on any of that. And then if you look at it that way, if they had just thrown him in a movie and done that, 15 minutes isn't enough to justify this, right? You couldn't have given the emotional depth that they've given. That's my feeling, right? And I think that's, for example, that's what they tried to do with WandaVision and things like that. Hawkeye, I saw more as a closure for Hawkeye and the reintroduction / origin of the new Hawkeye, because obviously they want to keep the character around, but you can't have
Jeremy Romanoff.
Right, and you can't have Jeremy Renner around forever.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, and then you also you get to see Natasha's sister also in there. It's a little bit of just the way I'm looking at Marvel on this is saying, we don't want to spend $200 million and 3 hours of screen time on introducing new characters. We want to spend 3 hours with action. We want, $200 million on pure action blockbuster cinema. We want this to be a summer smash. So let's get all that origin, emotional, whatever crap out of the way on TV. Let's give them the depth and the time to pull that off. And then we move on. That's how I see it.
Pete, I have to say, Pete, this should have been one of our debate club episodes, because actually you've gotten me to believe in you. That makes a lot of sense. I still don't like the episode, but
fair enough, yeah.
I have to say that's a very good strategy. And when you explain it that way, which I've totally bought into, it makes me think of Halo and how disappointing Halo is, because then if you would have applied that same strategy to Halo, you could say Halo series is where they should have been doing more backstory, better backstory, showing more origin, and the first season would conclude with kind of the Halo that we know,
Right.
the Master Chief that we know. And then it could go into an incredible season 2. It could go into possible movie.
Or even a movie. Exactly.
Yeah, they've kind of, you got me there. I have to say, it makes sense. I'm still not more excited to watch this episode again. And going forward, I guess Moon Knight will end on a high note.
Yeah, I will say this, right? So look, there's the way they've structured it in terms of timing. I didn't put it together when the first episode came out because I wasn't thinking 6 weeks ahead, right? But now we've got one more episode. That episode is likely going to be action heavy, right? I expect to see a hell of a lot more of Moon Knight in there.
It has to.
It has to. You're absolutely right. There has to be something because, and again, I loved this episode. Honestly, this episode highlighted everything about Oscar Isaac's acting ability. In terms of Moon Knight, whether it was interesting or not is meh. It was fine. I like that you get to see, a lot of the origin of the character. But again, I'm with you on that. I kind of get it. When I watch a Marvel series, I kind of want to see shooting. I want to see action. I want to see, fly-by-wire techniques, whatever it is. But I will say this episode, you really get to see Oscar Isaac, the actor, and act the pants off of anyone in the MCU. Honestly, anyone in the MCU right now. I don't think there's anyone who's better in the MCU as an actor.
Whoa. Who's number 2? Who's number 2?
Oh, man.
Sounds like debate club topic.
Yeah, it could be. Could very well be. It's a tough call. It's really a tough call. Like, if you look at the dramatic moments in all of the MCU, I would say this episode 5 is probably my number 1 in the entire MCU. Then, now that the Daredevil sequence is Daredevil and the Netflix Marvel universe has been reintegrated, maybe, there's some in there. Oh, Dr. Octopus versus Spider-Man in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2. There was some great dramatic moments in there as well. Again, the Loki sequences in even Thor 3 and in Thor 1 were excellent. Like, you really get to see a little bit of depth and gravitas to these characters, which we otherwise don't really get. Anyway, so I went off on a tangent there. The point is that what I didn't realize is that next week when episode 6 comes out, it's not just the finale, it also leads up to the opening of Doctor Strange 2. And that cannot be a coincidence.
So hold on, let's go through the timeline here. On May 5th, which is a Thursday, Doctor Strange 2 opens. When is the finale of Moon Knight?
The Wednesday before.
So on the 4th of May.
Yes. On Star Wars Day. On May the 4th be with you.
Oh, May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
So I can't be. Yeah.
So
okay.
I think that, so in terms of timing, look, Disney is very smart. I'm sure, the MCU, they know what they're doing, but that cannot be a coincidence. And this is where maybe, the segment is Pete goes into his conspiracy theory, but I can't help but feel like there's a reason that Moon Knight.
That's a new segment. Yeah. Pete's conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I love it. What is your conspiracy theory here?
No, my feeling is that there's no way this is a coincidence that the finale of Moon Knight ends plays out the day before Doctor Strange 2 opens. That's not to say, I don't expect to see Doctor Strange show up miraculously in episode 6 of Moon Knight. But maybe Wanda shows up with her multiverse. Maybe she uses the Darkhold to get him out of this, afterlife in Egypt. Maybe I
think we'll find out whether or not that's a coincidence, like you said, based on what happens in that episode.
Yeah. So in any case, it's, and if it's not a coincidence, then it's just good timing in the sense that, I expect Moon Knight's going to end on a high. I think we saw it It had its emotional high with episode 5. I expect and anticipate like an action high with episode 6 and the finale. And in whichever case, I feel like my emotions are going to be relatively high going into it and coming out of it, which will be perfect for Doctor Strange 2, which I will see on Thursday morning.
Can I ask you, in terms of a character, Moon Knight is a new Marvel character, or a newer Marvel character.
Mm-hmm.
How compelling is he to you? I mean, are you like, okay, the show's great, Isaacs is great. Are you like, hey, I think Moon Knight is amazing, or are you like, well, okay.
Okay, so as a superhero, meh. As an actual superhero, meh. But as Mark Spector, as the concept of the superhero, I'm very high on it. Because if you think about it, so we've got the Norse gods represented with Thor and his series, right? And then if you look at all the different superheroes, and even forget the superheroes, even if you look at, video games, if you look at other stories, like, you have God of War with Sony, and they've got, again, a focus on the Norse mythology there. And then you've got, Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed series, which kind of goes into a little bit of the, lately has gone a little bit into the mythology, maybe not the mythology necessarily of the Mediterranean per se, but nothing, and a little bit with, I guess, with Origins, a little bit with the Greek, but you didn't really see much of that. This show, I think, is one of the first ones to really dive deep on the religious mythos and the mythology of Egyptian superheroes. And it's so different, or it's so unique, maybe not super different, but at least very unique. And I love the way they've been depicted, right? Like, I really like Khonshu's art design. I really like this concept of the Field of Reeds and Ta'aret and, this boat going across this, like, desert of sand where they kind of have to balance their hearts. I love all of that. Like, I'm a big fan of mythology and religious mythology. So, like, Greek mythology was my thing, Roman mythology, all of these kinds of things. It's rare to see something come out of the Middle East in Western culture or in Western media. So for me, I like that. Again, on paper, conceptually, it's a lot more about, balance and representation. I'm a fan of that.
So I'm extraordinarily with you on that. I agree that it's good to get away from the interplanetary characters. It's good to get away from some of those concepts. And I think that, Egyptian mythology is really captivating to everybody. But saying that, I wish that they would have just focused on the Egyptian mythology. And I feel like going into Mark Spector's psyche, I just feel like that was an unnecessary distraction. The brother dying, the mother being abusive. I just found all of that kind of like mental health stuff, which apart from the fact being really delicate to touch in this kind of like society that we have, I didn't think that was necessary. I didn't think it advanced things. It explains some things, but I just felt like if they would have focused on the Egyptian mythology, I think you'd have a really compelling superhero in a great setting, and Mark could have had a little bit more of a simplified backstory, because I think that kind of creating the negativity of death, of an abusive parent, of having kind of a mental illness, took away from all the other good things that they did here that were kind of groundbreaking,
Yeah, I think
how many movies have we seen or shows have we seen where the main character struggles because their younger sibling died? Countless almost, right? How many shows have we seen where the person comes from an abusive mother or father? Countless. It's not new. It's not necessary. It's really negative, to be honest. And I really wish they would have cut that out, because the rest is so good. So when you have this other stuff, it just kind of was noise that drowned out, for me, the better elements,
So let me flip it on its head, right? So I don't disagree with you, but let me tell you why I do disagree with you.
Okay.
So there's two facets to this Mark Spector story, right? Right. One, which is his mental issues that he's got from the traumas that he suffered as a child. And the second is the physical trauma, which leads to him becoming, this Egyptian avatar, God's avatar, right?
Yeah.
So both of them require a certain element of walking on eggshells, right? Especially in today's charged environment of how you depict mental health and so forth. And I think of all of them, Thor in the MCU showed that, the effects of depression after Infinity War, right? And then you also see a little bit of PTSD with Tony Stark in Iron Man 3 after Avengers 1, right? So you see a little bit of mental health struggles in the MCU, but they've generally speaking either been glossed over or made a little bit of a joke about, that kind of thing. It's not really been a focus. And I'm not saying it should be or shouldn't be, but for someone like Mark, it's a character defining thing for him. So I think it's important that we see that. And I think that if I have to choose to watch that in a nuanced way at home versus rushed over on the cinema screen, I think it's better to see that nuanced, because I think I will agree with you. Marvel very deftly handled this situation, right? You have a man who's got a mental block. He's got significant psychological trauma. He's been abused emotionally and physically by his mother. While conceptually that may not be anything very new, it's rare for a superhero, and it's unheard of. It's rare for the protagonist, and it's almost unheard of in the Marvel universe, right? So we get to see a little bit of that, and I think, and maybe I hope we see more of what you're saying, where we see, the mythological side of that. I think that's more compelling to see on the big screen than it is on the screen at home. And maybe we dive a little deeper into the mythology in the Moon Knight movie of, the gods and how the gods are being played against each other or not. And hey, maybe we still got one more episode. Maybe we see a lot more of that in this next episode, because obviously somehow Khonshu has to be involved. Somehow Amit has to be involved. Somehow all the other gods have to come into play to prevent Amit from taking over, right?
So this is a good, I guess, probably segue into the issue that I want to see wrapped up here in the last episode, which is, the mission, if you will, of this series was Khonshu was trying to stop, the resurrection of Amit, right? Mm-hmm. So let's assume that this is successful, right? All right. Problem solved. Amit's gone. Harrow is gone. What is then the purpose of Khonshu kind of going forward? What is the role of Dark Knight going forward? They're not really a Batman vigilante. They're not a Superman, I'm going to save the world. They're not a Avengers, hey, we're here to, protect Earth from all these existential threats. What is Khonshu then? What is Mark? What is their role then as a superhero going forward?
I think it is a little bit like Batman. I know you kind of said no to that, but I actually think it is him then not patrolling the streets like Batman does, because Batman does it on a very small scale, right? He only does it in Gotham. Yeah. I think Khonshu's role continues, which is to say, hey, I need someone to be my avatar on Earth and to mete out justice on those people who are wrongdoers and evildoers, right? Whereas Amit is saying, I'm going to judge you before you commit any
So it's
sins.
the post-judgment bad guys.
Right. I think that this is I think that continues. And I don't think that has anything to do with Amit being there or not. I think Khonshu and Amit, two sides of the same coin, right? And I think that regardless of whether Amit is a problem or not, even, let's say he's been doing this for hundreds of years and Amit's not been around for hundreds of years, I imagine that Khonshu was still doing the same thing. I think he was still finding avatars to go out for him and go get bad guys. That's where I see Khonshu at the moment. That's where I see him after this because, and again, assuming there's a tie-in with Doctor Strange, maybe Khonshu loses, right? Maybe Mark loses and, Doctor Strange and Wanda and whoever else it is there to kind of help them at the end of the episode, which maybe sets up the movie or maybe sets up the second season, whatever it is. Oscar Isaacs is only signed up for one season, right? He's only done 6 episodes and that's it.
Let's put some odds. The odds of the last episode coming on Wednesday in 2 days, the odds that Doctor Strange shows up in this last episode, what do you think?
Doctor Strange character or Doctor Strange himself? Yeah. Like someone from the movie or Doctor Strange himself?
Oh, Doctor Strange himself.
Okay, so those I think odds are low. I'd say 20% max. Maybe even less. I'd say 10%.
If it was someone else from Doctor Strange movie, who would it be?
It could either be Wanda. It could be Wanda.
No.
It could also be the third star.
Yeah.
The third star who they're introducing,
Wong?
the new character.
Oh.
I will tell you in a second. Let me fire up
Ms.
IMDb.
Marvel? So that you would give higher odds, like 40%?
Yes.
And then what do you think is the likelihood that Moon Knight shows up in Doctor Strange 2?
Relatively low. I think I think now you're going to be asking for too much because I think they've already got so many. I would imagine it's going to be like less than 5% because they've.
Do we know who's? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Professor X, Patrick Stewart's Professor X. I think I'm pretty sure we're going to see. Well, I'm not pretty sure. I'm very hopeful we're going to see Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. I just don't see.
Spider-Man's going to be in it?
I don't think Spider-Man's going to be in it.
Huh.
Okay, so Doctor Strange 2, America Chavez. America Chavez is the third character that I think is going to be in there. She's going to be introduced. She's also supposed to be someone who can teleport between multiverses, I guess. Yeah. So I think that the odds that someone from the MCU coming in at the end of episode 6, I'd say is somewhere between 60 and 80%. Let's go 70%. That's how high I think it is. I think it's more likely that someone from the MCU comes in. Someone from the Doctor Strange movie, I imagine, is around 40%. Doctor Strange himself, I imagine, is around 10%. The flip side, I don't expect to see Moon Knight in any of Doctor Strange's things.
All right, we'll find out. So, should we do a breakdown of the final episode when it happens this week?
Yes, and maybe your ratings go from a skip to a subscribe. Not to a subscribe, but certainly to a mooch.
Yeah,
I understand you're at a skip now. I fully expect. I fully understand it, and I appreciate where you're coming from. It's hilarious. I actually went I went stronger into my subscribe because honestly, in terms of superhero movies, this is something that, or in terms of superhero genre, this is something that very few of them have done, which I really like.
It is definitely something different. And I have to say, on the positive side, for me at least, there is a tendency to have a lot of fatigue with a newly introduced, character. So to the extent that you're going to try something a little bit different, it's probably a good time because there is a limit as to how much copy and paste you can do. So like I said, I've come to your way of thinking. I think it's actually quite brilliant what they've done. But for me personally, I didn't get anything out of this episode. And the episodes have slowly been the less action, the less fulfilled I've been kind of watching them because I am watching this under the guise of an action series or a superhero series versus a dramatic series, I mean, I watch Ozark for drama. I'm watching other things for drama. If I want to, If I'm in the mindset of watching a drama, I turn on a drama. When I'm in the mindset of watching an action thriller, I turn on an action thriller, And I just feel like it's a little bit disappointing when you turn on what should be a superhero Marvel action movie or show, and you find instead you've gotten, like all this drama. It's
hard to justify it.
Not meeting my expectations. That's making me maybe a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
Combined with a little bit of a complicated storyline. Again, I was okay with each one of these kind of storylines, but the fact that they're in Harrow's psychiatric office, that they're on this boat, then he's back in his childhood arguing with his mom about his brother. It was just like too many things combined, none of which were the purpose of me turning on the show in the first place.
Yeah. I get it. Look, what you're saying makes sense. What I like is that, again, this is Marvel flipping the script on its head to say, hey, look, we want to fight superhero fatigue. We want to fight that because we've got 40 more movies coming out over the next 10 years.
Pete, a pleasure as always. I'll catch you on the flip side. We've got a lot more to talk about in other episodes.
We do. We've got lots to go. Thank you very much for your time, Ethan.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Join us on the next Films and Stuff or the Films and Stuff Debate Club on our YouTube channel.
That's right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.